My Components section is where you manage your list of components in Component Creator. It gives you all the tools you need to create a new component, clone an existing component, delete a component, build and download a component, share a component in the component directory, which we'll talk about, or import a component from the component directory. So let's start by adding a new component. If you don't have any components yet, you'll see a link to get started with a new component. If you already have a component like I do here, you'll see this green New Component button. So let's go ahead and click on this and get started. Now for this series, I want to create a component to manage and display a list of movies with my review of the movie. So let's just call it com_movies, since that's descriptive of what it's about. Now you'll notice once I click off of this field that it automatically inserts a display name for me based on the name of the component. Now the display name movies makes a lot of sense for what we're going with, so I'll just leave it as movies, but you could call it something else, like I could call it Cory's movies or OS training movies. But let's just leave it at movies and be satisfied with that. So the next thing we need to do is give it a description. So we'll say this component is used to display a list of movies and my reviews of those movies. Pretty simple. You can add whatever you want here, just as long as it's descriptive of what the component does. Again, it's totally up to you. One cool thing that I'll point out is each field has this little blue icon with a question mark. And that includes a tooltip which explains what that field is about. The tooltip makes it really easy to work your way through the system with quick little explanations of each field throughout the system, so you can quickly get a reference as to what that field is about. So moving on, after our description, the next thing that we see is an option to include language files. This is really useful because if you want to include something other than English, you can include those language files if you know that you're going to need to translate your component into other languages. So again, that's just a really useful tool. So we could add, again, any language that Joomla supports is included here. So you can just select that language. It will install language files for that language with your component. Now after that, we can look at setting the version of our component up here. By default, it sets it to version 1.0.0, but again, you can set this to whatever makes the most sense for your component or whatever stage of development you're at. If you decide to make changes to your component down the road, you can come back and say it's 1.0.1, 1.1.0. You could start it out as 0.0.1, since it's really the very first version. And it's still under development. But I think 1.0.0 makes sense because, again, once you're done here in Component Creator, it's a fully functioning component ready to go. So really it is version 1.0 of your component. Next, you set the copyright for the component. And here you can, again, put whatever you want. Generally, it's going to be the year, your name, or the name of your company. So in this case, I'll just leave it at my name. And then after you set the copyright, you set the license. Again, this is whatever you want it to be. It defaults to the GPL because that's generally what Joomla components are and what they should be. This isn't a discussion about whether or not you should have GPL components, but it defaults to that. You can set it to some proprietary license or MIT license or whatever you choose, whatever makes the most sense for you. This is where you would enter that information. Next, we enter the author information. So this is just your name, your email address, and then your URL for your website. And then next is premium feature. Now again, this is only available if you've upgraded to a premium account. And this is to include the module. Now the Joomla module is a module for showing data or content from your component. This is really useful because you may want to display just like the latest news article or the latest news module from the Joomla content component or the category module from the Joomla content component. This is a module that displays content from your component. You're not limited to displaying it within the component itself. So I'll go ahead and check that to include a module. And so once you're satisfied with all of this information about your component, you just click Save Component, and there you go. So our component is saved and it's ready to go. It's not quite filled out yet, but we're ready to use it. Now I'll go back to my list of components. You can see I have 2 components. This one again has no table, so it's not going to do anything yet. We really can't build it and download it yet because, like I said, it doesn't do anything. There's nothing to build. So now another useful feature is the ability to clone a component. Now, let's say you have a client that wants a component similar to one that you already built for another client. Component Creator gives you this great ability to clone that existing components, and that saves you a ton of time because you don't have to go through and configure the component, its tables and its fields, its views, parameters, and whatever else you've already done. It gives you a starting point for that new component that you can edit as needed to account for the differences between the original component and the new client's requirements. So let's go ahead and do that. It's really easy. All you do is you just click Clone. I'll clone this test component. So we click Clone, give it a new name. I'll call it Test2, and then clone it. And there you go. So now I have a complete copy of this first test component called Test2. Again, that's really useful. It's a huge time saver. Now, if you have a component that you don't need anymore, and it's just kind of cluttering up your list of components, you can simply delete it to get it out of your component list. So let's go ahead and do that. So I don't need Test2, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of it. So I'll just click Delete, Delete, and there you go. It's gone. Now, once your component is ready to build and download so that you can install it into your Joomla installation, all you need to do is click Build and Download, and Component Creator does the rest. It pops up this little download form so I can download the component. I'm not going to do that now because I don't need to. But Component Creator, you see it adds all the necessary files and compiles them all into a really neat installation package. So all you got to do is download the zip file, upload it to your Joomla installation, and it installs it for you. So that's a really great tool, really useful. Now, another great feature is the ability to share your component with the world. Now, if you build a component that you think others might find useful, you can share it in the component directory. So I'm going to go ahead and share my movies component. And so let me go back and show you what I did again. So by my movies component, you see there's the share button. So if I share that, it pops up this window. And so I can select enable sharing of this component. So I want to do that. So that gives me a sharing code for this component. Now this makes it possible so anybody else with premium access to Component Creator can actually import my component and use it as a starting point for their own components. And then if I select share this component in our component directory, this just makes the component available to other users from the component directory. So I'm going to capitalize the M in movies, and I'll just say movies by OS Training, and apply. So now that's saved and shared in the component directory. So if we scroll down here to the bottom, you can see under resources, they have their component directory. So I'm going to open that in a new tab. You can see there's the component directory. Right now, Movies by OS Training is the only component in the directory. And so really, I would encourage you guys, as you start building components in Component Creator, start sharing those in the component directory and really build that up. Component Creator community to start using and helping each other build really great components. Now, again, like I said, if you have premium access, you can actually import a component from the directory. So if you just click on Import Component, now if you've got that share code, you just paste it here and then click Import Component. So now that we've built our component, next we'll look at building out the component with tables, subforms, empty views, and parameters, and we'll look at editing our component's details.